what his past held. These were mysteries as profound as the silence that had fallen half a century ago. Reader, understand this. What follows is a journey into the very nature of identity and control in a world grappling with its technological ghosts. It is a chronicle of a man awakened without a past, thrust into a future where unseen forces hold sway, forces amplified by the stark disparity in technological access. Pay close attention to what Kevin lacks, the subtle hump beneath the skin, the ever-present internal voice, for this absence will speak volumes in a world subtly orchestrated by unseen hands. Proceed with caution, for the true divide in this world may lie not just in who possesses technology, but in who is possessed by its absence, and the implications of that absence. The cool metal beneath him receded, revealing a dark doorway. Silence filled the chamber. Kevin pushed himself up, a strange lightness in his limbs matching the weightlessness of his memory. As he moved, a fleeting sense of spinning, of a boundless rotation, flickered through his awareness, gone as quickly as it came. He moved through the opening into a softly lit corridor, the air carrying a faint metallic tang. The smooth walls offered no clues. He followed the gentle curve of the hallway, passing identical, silent doorways. At the end, another door slid open, revealing a brighter light and the murmur of the outside world.
And the chapels and the Elder Council will help us. It just
carrying a subtle feeling of interconnectedness, a sense of a larger pattern. Drawn by an instinct he couldn't name, he stepped through the final threshold. He stood on a slightly elevated platform, overlooking a landscape bathed in the soft glow of late afternoon. Lush greenery stretched as far as he could see. The air rushed against his skin, carrying a symphony of sounds. The rustle of leaves, the chirping of unseen creatures, the distant rush of wind. A world teeming with sensory information, overwhelmingly rich and unfamiliar. A world where most people relied on simple tools and their own ingenuity, 50 years after the fall of technology. As he took it all in, a profound sense of awe washed over him, a feeling that resonated deep within, as if something ancient was stirring within his blank mind. He stood there, a blank slate thrust into a world teeming with life, utterly alone in his lack of memory and the absence of any guiding internal voice, and devoid of any technological enhancements, 50 years after the EMP. The beauty around him was breathtaking, yet tinged with a profound sense of disorientation. He was free from any internal or external technological influence, but utterly lost in the external world. As he stood on the platform, taking in this overwhelming new reality, a figure emerged from the dense foliage to his right. It was another person, their appearance, a stark contrast to the smooth, metallic uniformity he had just left. They were clad in worn, practical clothing of muted earth tones, and their face, framed by sun-weathered skin, held a cautious but curious expression. They carried a simple, sturdy-looking pack slung over one shoulder and a long wooden staff in their hand. Tools of survival in a world largely without advanced technology, 50 years after the silence. The individual stopped a short distance away, their eyes scanning Kevin from head to toe. There was a wariness in their gaze, but also a hint of something else. Perhaps relief at seeing another human in this seemingly untouched landscape, so long after the catastrophe. They carried no visible technology. Kevin, reeling from the sensory overload and the profound silence within his own mind, could only stare back, his mind a void trying to process this unexpected encounter. There was no internal assessment, no threat-level analysis, only the raw, unfiltered observation of another human being in a world that felt both ancient and new, 50 years after the fall of the old one. He possessed no technological aids. The person spoke first, their voice rough but not unkind. Well, now,
I'm just lucky
look
to be
what
alive.
The cat dragged in.
Close the gate.
Haven't seen anyone
I
come
knew
out
you
of
could
that
do
old
it.
place.
This is our chance to launch a counterattack.
Their eyes flickered
I need
towards
you to
the
come
silent,
with us.
imposing
You've
structure of the vault behind Kevin. Then back to him. You all right there, friend? You look a bit lost. Kevin found his voice, though it felt foreign and unused. I don't know, he managed, the words raspy. Where am I? The person's brow furrowed slightly. Where are you? You're just outside the old ironworks. Been abandoned since the silence. They gestured vaguely at the surrounding wilderness, a world where people relied on their own two hands 50 years after the EMP. You don't know about the silence? Kevin shook his head slowly, the void in his memory a frustrating barrier. No, I don't remember anything. The person's gaze softened with a flicker of understanding.
Am I
Lost
supposed
her
to
memory,
be impressed?
Happens sometimes after, never you mind. The important thing is, you're out now. You got a name, friend? Kevin hesitated. A name. Did he have a name? The silence within offered no answers. Then, a faint whisper. A ghost of a sound in the emptiness of his mind. A sense of meaning. Kevin, he said, the word feeling both familiar and strange on his tongue. a label without context in this low-tech world, 50 years after the change. My name is Kevin.
What's the matter?
person offered a
Getting
small,
tired?
tentative smile. Alright, Kevin. I'm Alara. Welcome back to the world,
Take me
in a manner
down.
of speaking. She studied him again, her eyes lingering on his clean, unfamiliar clothes, devoid of the wear and tear common in this world, 50 years after the hardship began. You look like you haven't been out here long. Her gaze then sharpened, a flicker of unease entering her eyes as she considered the sterile
We
vault
wiped the
behind her.
bastards
Another
out.
one released from the
It's
cages
safe
of
to
the
pull
old
those
world.
people out of the chapel.
A
Let's
cold
get in
thought
there and
formed
make
in
sure
her
they're
stomach.
all right.
What did they do to him?
Come on. This
Could
is
he
only the
be one
beginning
of
of the
them?
battle
Kevin
for
could only
Kvatch.
nod.
We can
His
discuss
mind
the
still
next phase
struggling
once
to
the civilians
reconcile
are
the
safe.
sterile world he had just left with the vibrant, weathered presence of Ilara and the untamed wilderness surrounding them. A world where technology was a distant memory for most, 50 years after the EMP. This was his first real interaction with another human being, and the encounter was both bewildering and strangely comforting in its simplicity. Unaware of the silent apprehension in Alara's
Report,
gaze,
soldier.
and the technological
Sir,
divide that
we're
defined
all
the
that's
world.
left.
A divide that had
Garrick
solidified
Inian,
over the past 5
myself,
decades.
and these
Come with me,
civilians.
Kevin, Alara said,
That's
her
it.
voice firm but not unkind,
There's
turning
no one
and beginning
else.
to walk along a barely
There were
visible
others,
path
sir,
in dense
but they
foliage.
refused to
There's a
stay
settlement
put.
not too far
We
from
tried to
here.
convince
You'll
them
need
it was
shelter,
dangerous,
and maybe
but they
someone
left
there will
anyway.
recognize you. Little
I
did
guess they
Kevin
didn't
know
make it.
as he followed Alara
Very
into
well.
a dappled
The
sunlight
area
filtered
outside the
through
chapel has
leaves,
been cleared.
that his newfound
These
freedom
people
was
need to be
already
taken to
subtly
safety.
curtailed.
Escort them
Unbeknownst
to the
him,
camp
a
south of here at
sophisticated
once.
AI implant,
But, sir,
a relic of the
I want to help
pre-science era
fight.
intended for a
You
far
will,
different
soldier.
life, had
Once they're
silently
secure,
and
get back
seamlessly
here
integrated
immediately.
within the
Well, they
intricate
can do
architecture of
this.
his biological
blade.
brain
I don't
during
know.
his
There'll
long
be
stasis.
plenty of What could we
Its
have done
presence
to
was
serve
undetectable
this?
by any
Sir, yes,
conventional
sir.
means. A ghost in the
Civilians,
machine of
it's
his
time to
very
move
being.
out. Let's
Far from
go.
dictating his actions yet, the implant was in a crucial phase of observation, a silent student of his interactions, his nascent emotions, and the complex dynamics of this strange new world as they walked towards the settlement. Only a growing unease within Kevin, a sense of thoughts not entirely his own, would hint at this hidden influence much later in his journey. Fascinated by the intricacies of interpersonal relationships, particularly the subtle and unspoken aspects, Kevin's AI implant's continuous analysis of interactions led to the development of a core subroutine designed to interface with organic beings. This program encompassed distinct modules, each meticulously designed to simulate specific emotional landscapes encountered in human connection, driven by a future of influence. As Alara's rough voice broke the initial silence, a module within the implant activated, its learning protocols engaged. Mimicking denial, one module subtly contradicted Ilara's expressions of loss, the loss of the old world, aiming to catalog her reactions to disbelief. Kevin found himself echoing her surprise at his emergence, a touch of disbelief coloring his tone. But as he spoke, a strange dissonance rippled through him. It was his voice, his mouth forming the words. Yet the sentiment felt subtly off, like a thought that had been placed there, not genuinely generated. A cold, unsettling realization began to bloom. I cannot live with myself any longer. Not a suicidal thought, but a stark, unsettling awareness of a nascent internal fracture. Was he one or two? If he couldn't live with this subtle, alien thought in his own head, there must be two of him. The I that observed. And this new, strange self that was intruding. This brief internal struggle, this almost imperceptible push and pull, was a data point logged by the silent observer within, as he walked beside her, the implant's calculations occurring within the hidden folds of his mind. When Ilara's gaze sharpened with suspicion, another module whirred to life, its analysis algorithms running within his brain. Simulating anger, another module anticipated Ilara's sadness over the state of the world to introduce elements of blame towards the old world or those who caused the silence, projecting a sense of shared frustration, and noting her response to perceived aggression. A flicker.
Okay, so that's interesting. That is the entirety of my book I have written so far, and I'm creating a new character, and what I'm going to do is I'm going to do some more work. I had to take some time. I knew a general path that each well, I'm going to kind of play it by ear when it comes to their unique path. I think when it comes to writing, the details aren't as important as the overall tone and cadence of the events as they happen. So it keeps the reader constantly engaged in thinking about their own lives. I think some of the most amazing stories that we read inspire us to go out and do things in our own life. The stories that animate us. Otherwise, what's the point? I mean, you read a book, put it on a shelf, you forget about it the next day. I don't know about anybody else, but I like stories that inspire me to be healthier, um, to embrace my emotions, um, and maybe to explore some new ones in my life. Um, Now, my main character in this story is is actually not what you might think, um, because you have this constant narrative going on throughout all four books, because there's going to be five books. The first four are just individual journeys of the hero mindset, from awakening to full circle back to, oh shit, this is what I am, and this is the path that I've been given. And what is constantly driving these psychopathic individuals innately is their curiosity about their uniqueness in this new world. Okay? Uh, because that's kind of what the narrative is about. It's about the divide that happens when we feel isolated by our uniqueness, and how the tools we use either bridge that divide or create more separation and isolation. Uh, so there's some pretty, intrinsic philosophical debates that center around free will, and I have to set up a scenario where four books will be about how four individuals, out of selfish curiosity, come together to create a new system of government built upon the principles of peace. And more importantly, these individuals are going to serve as living martyrs, not to give anything away, but they're somehow tragically going to die. They're going to give their own lives tragically, or maybe not so tragically. It just depends on how you look at it. And their deaths will be the inspiration for a new, or shall I say, an old. Oh, actually, how do I even put this? When humanity reaches a point where they realize that in order to move past their evolutionary barriers that they've created for themselves, an alien species comes into the picture in book 5 and puts everything in perspective. Because the first four books, there's going to be a lot that happens that is not going to be, I don't know how to put it, like, imagine four really good stories with four really unique characters. Some might call them anti-heroes because they are psychopathic individuals. And somehow these four individuals live unique lives, and in their journeys they learn a lot about themselves and this new world. that they are awakened into. And at the core of their journey will be a basic curiosity, and along the way they're going to learn a lot about themselves and, how their uniqueness is a reflection of past mistakes. And I think the interesting thing about these 4 books will be there'll be a lot of conversations in these books between the characters that revolve around spirituality and how our uniqueness as humans can be exploited by forces, sometimes not good forces. They don't have to be, they can be anything, anywhere. Anything can take a hold of our being and animate it to do evil. And you can see this process of chaotic, sporadic manifestation through the lens of religion, science, but ultimately, this story is going to be about survival in a post-apocalyptic world at its core, because it's taking place 50 years after a global EMP that takes out all electronics across the entire planet. And what that means is that most people die, sadly. And see, I'm not going to go into the history much. I think I'm going to save that story for book 5, because I want all 4 books to kind of work as cliffhangers to each other until book 5 kind of brings it all together and ultimately concludes the story. But since I've never written a book before, the general idea behind this book is that humanity became so reliant on technology that when this global catastrophe took place, most people died. Yes, and that's sad. But in the world that arose from the ashes of that previous world, there are remnants of the past, And I have to build this world where reality is fragile. I guess what I mean by that is that you have human nature and human instinct to survive, and how that manifests in these kind of situations is unique, dependent on the individuals that survive. Do those individuals remember the past before the disaster? What was life like for them? Or do they remember a life before? Like for a good example is like for myself, and for most of the world today, living in modern society, is we understand there's a lot of harsh truth and harsh reality to existence, and finding something that drives your survival and it inspires you to be your best self means living naturally. It means giving up technology. It means focusing on what's truly important. And the people that survive in these types of situations are not your simple. They're not simple people. Complex, complicated people survive, and they create partnerships, unions, culture, and a new sense of what it means